Okay, so here is the sketch, and basically what I do is, again, I'll focus on like a big shape, like the building here, and then this tree, and the distant hills, and this here. So trying to focus on big, simple shapes, and then I'll break it down into more specific, more specific shapes like the windows and the cars, but I'm still not putting in a lot of detail. I just want to make sure that the layout is correct. And the next thing I'll do is map out the shadow pattern, because that's going to change pretty quickly. All right, I'm going with my usual dark mixture of alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue. Add a little liquid to thin it. I'll also sometimes add some odorless mineral spirits as well. As I've talked about before, I like to have transparent darks. Okay, so here is the shadow pattern. Next, I'm going to try to map in a shadow color for the building. So I'm going to start off with a mid-tone value. Again, my palette is a mid-tone gray, so I'm using that to gauge the value. And I'm going with a sort of like blue-green here, and I used ultramarine blue, cadmium yellow, lemon, and then a little bit of this alizarin crimson to gray it down, and we'll see how that looks. And again, we'll want to compare the value. Like the sky is going to be really light, so I think this is pretty close. Like, so a mid-tone seems pretty good. The woodwork around the windows is actually painted white, so I'm going to use a different color for that. Okay, so for the window frames, I'm using ultramarine and titanium white. And I know that looks pretty saturated, but it's probably going to pick up some of the burnt sienna, which will gray it down a bit. Okay. And I'm already losing the light on the building, but I remember where it was. It was just like a lot of light right along the front here. So I'll be able to put that in after. Okay, and for the sky, I'm going with titanium white and a touch of phthalo blue. And I can adjust these colors and values. I always do. But right now, at this point during the block-in, I'm just trying to get approximate colors and values. And yeah, and I'll tune it up later. Alright, so now I'm mixing up a color for the street, and I'm using yellow ochre, titanium white, and a touch of dioxazine purple. I want the street to kind of be warm in color. So at this point I've cleaned my palette and I'm mixing up another dark. I'm going to start, working into the shapes that I've already established. I'm going to thin it with liquid, but not quite as much. I'm going to leave the paint a little bit thicker. And the idea is that I load the brush and then make a stroke. Load the brush, make a stroke like that. So load the brush, make a stroke. Load, make a stroke. And I'll just keep doing that until the painting is finished. Okay, so the area under here is really complicated. I'm just squinting at the subject and looking for shifts in color, little shapes, and I'm not even really looking for, you know, objects in particular. I'm just more looking for, like I said, shapes of color and value. That's really it. All right, so I'm going to add some of the light on the front of the building, even though it's disappeared. I'm using titanium white with a touch of cadmium yellow medium. And I want to load the brush up really well. And even though it's going to be a bit sloppy, I can kind of fix it up later. So there was light along the front here. And then load it again. And there was also light right here. Okay, so for the cars over here, I've just kind of masked in some colors, you know, suggested the windshields, but there's obviously no detail at all. Same with these cars here, but what defines the cars are the highlights. All right, so I've got titanium white with cadmium yellow medium and kind of a small synthetic #2 flat. There are highlights in the front of the car. Say here, here, I'll just go randomly. And then also like up around the hood, or actually not the hood, but the roof. That's good enough. On the other side, the highlights are a little bit bluer. Okay, so here's a look at the finished painting. Overall, I think the composition worked out. I was a little concerned about this portion here being too low, but I think it's okay, actually. Yeah, it doesn't bother me. I did push the red in the awning here. It was more of like a burgundy color and it was really faded. Also, too, this aqua color in the buildings pushed that a bit too. The value's pretty light. So it could possibly be a little bit darker, but I do like the fact that there are these bits of warmth showing through, you know, sort of transparent areas. So I think I'm gonna live with it. I think it's okay. The hills, I did something a little different in the hills. You know, back here there were a bunch of houses and stuff like that. And so, you know, I first blocked it in sort of like an ultramarine, kind of a dull, you know, purplish color. And then I came over with some phthalo blue, just little bits of phthalo highlights, and that sometimes creates a sense of depth. There's also green in there too. But anyway, I like the play of the two blues against each other. Also included a bit of the road in the distance. I think that worked out. And then, you know, a suggestion of like the lines in the street. It's amazing what that'll do. Just a simple detail like that. Let's take a closer look. Look at these cars. You know, there's really not much to them. These are a little bit more defined over here. And here's a close-up of the shop. I did add those little bits of orange there as like suggesting some lights inside. Cityscapes are the most challenging plein air paintings for me. I think it's getting a little easier, but I still struggle every time for obvious reasons. I mean, there's so much information, so much detail, you know, and you've got to sort of see past that to the big shapes. Squinting helps, you know, squint at your scene, focus on those big shapes. But as I talked about previously, it's just a matter of taking the broad and working towards the specific. So yeah, just, you know, focus on big shapes and then just break them down without, you know, without breaking up the overall design. That's the big challenge. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments if you'd like to see some extra videos and help support the channel. There's a Patreon link down below. The last video I made, last video I posted on Patreon was sharing some of my early plein air work from 2007 to 2012. So if that sounds interesting, like I said, link below. Other than that, stay creative and I'll see you guys in the next video.